Hi, I'm Trushalin, professor at College of Communication, National Chengchi University, Taiwan. It's my pleasure to share my research about social bots use disinformation interaction and risk attitude with you. And my co-author and I, we use the extended parallel process model to looking at the issue. What is social bots? Controlled by algorithms, social bots refer to automatic fake accounts on social media mimicking human behaviors. They were tools to influence politics, elections, and disseminate health disinformation during COVID-19. Their message usually contain negative sentiments and polarized opinions. In this study, we call disguised social bots. They are defined as the human-like fake social media accounts using for the malicious online activities. In Taiwan, evidence shows malicious social bots pose threats and risk to our democracy and also pandemic crisis because they disseminated the information which is not true and caused the public panicking or manipulate the opinions. Case studies find very little quantitative research investigates the complex relationships among social bot use, disinformation, and the risk. Therefore, we use the EPPM model to looking at the using the web survey to examine how Taiwanese social bots users, their perceived efficacy, perceived threats, influence the risk attitudes toward disguised social bots and the behavioral intention. This extended parallel process model focus on efficacy, threats, and clarify the role of emotion, usually fear, in relation to information, and the risk control behavioral intention. Regarding the disguised social bots as risks, this study adapts EPPM as the theoretical framework, use it to predict how individuals react to disguised social bots fear factor. Social bots tend to be used to disseminate fearful content, agitate negative sentiments, and therefore they will increase the perceived threat and risk. So that's why we think it's appropriate to use the model to looking at our study. We also replace the attitudes with perceived risk attitude. So threat control appraisal, looking at the perceived threat. So it's how people cognitively perceive themselves being harmed or danger. Divide into two factors: perceived severity, meaning people's perceptions of seriousness of the threats, and perceived sustainability, people perceive their likelihood being affected by the threats. The other aspect, danger control appraisal. We look at perceived efficacy. It is defined as how people think they can be effective visibilities to use the actions or responses to prevent themselves from the threat. So perceived efficacy divide into two components: self-efficacy, response efficacy. Self-efficacy is personal belief in their personal ability to perform recommended response. And response efficacy, meaning people believe after they perform the response, how effectively they can help them being protected from the threats. So based on the EPPM and related past study, we propose self-efficacy and the response efficacies are both negatively associated with the risk attitude towards social bots. In contrast, the perceived severity and perceived sustainabilities both are positively associated with the risk. And the hypothesis 3, risk attitude is positive associated with the protective intention and the defensive intention. The study tests the so-called media factors, including the social bus use and the interaction with disinformation. We put it in the EPPM model and looking at how they influence the threat control appraisal and danger control appraisals of the disguised social bots risk. And we know past study all support and said that social bots during the COVID-19 and they spread unreliable information, worsening the infodemic and pose threats to the global public health. And they usually spread the information with low credibility and also emotional landing. So we propose the following hypothesis. Social bot use is positive associated with the self-efficacy, response efficacy, perceived severity, and perceived susceptibility. And hypothesis 5, looking at the interaction with this information, also have the positive association with the aforementioned 4 factors. So here is the proposed research model. Okay. We conduct a web survey in August 2021 to examine Taiwanese users' perception and attitude toward disguised social bots. The filtering criteria include Taiwanese social media users about 20 years old with the experiences of using social bots. The respondents were recruited from the panel, cyber panel data. They will fit the demographic quotas like gender, age, education of the 2021 Taiwanese social media users profile. Among the 2,000 respondents, we clean the data, and finally we get a valid samples number is 250 respondents. We put them into, watching the videos and give them the definition of disguised social bots before they answer the questions, because these are the emerging technologies, and we would like them to have the consensus before they can give meaningful information to us. So average people use the social bots with time like 2.8 years. But here, social bots include the very general like Facebook bots, live bots, and the Siri, etc. And 36.1% majority of people interact with them once a week. But only 20% of them said they could identify so-called disguised social bots based on the open-ended questions answer. We know that people said they usually encountering the disguised social bots when they were actually contacted or randomly befriended with strangers on social media. And sometimes they even being cheated, defrauded for the money or identity or any kind of issues. So they identify the ways to help them to detect the disguised social bots. First, usually social bots will provide unusual replies and account information. They give the irrelevant or wrong answers, or they give instant feedbacks, standardized replies. And these replies or comments tend to be extreme, biased. Political issue particularly will show this kind of bias. And some of them will take further actions to verify the authenticity of the accounts or the truthfulness of the messages by checking the fact check organization app or consult with the professionals. This study used the SEM, analysis, and the results show here. Okay, you can tell it has very good model fit. And this table, we actually summarize our hypothesis testing results. Okay, with time constraint, we will actually elaborate on the meanings of the hypothesis results in a discussion session. So first of all, we are the pioneer in conducting the quantitative studies to examine the complex relations between social bots, disinformation risk, and the behavioral intention in the context of disguised social bots and in the context of Asia. So we find EPPM is appropriate theoretical model to examine such risk. We did looking at the danger control factors and the fear control appraisal factors and their relationship with the risk and the intention. The novelty of our research model include 2 parts. First, we replace affective attitude, the general attitude, with the risk attitude. Second, we add social bots use and disinformation interactions as the media factors to suit the context of disguised social bots. And then the final result shows our modified EPPM model has very good explanatory power. So why social bots will actually have the risk attitudes, which is not the same as we predict. Self-efficacy shows no significance. Response efficacy shows negative associated with the risk attitude. Self-efficacy has no relations. People don't see the connections between the two. But risk response efficacy, focusing on confidence, knowledge, and skills to use the social media credible information, and how they can evaluate the quality and truthfulness of the content, and help them to make decision. So people with a higher response efficacy, they tend to feel more capable to identify disguised bots and feel less risky. So perceived threats have relatively higher predicting power over the perceived efficacy in the contest. So because different cultures have the results that perceived sustainability and severity may not have the same associations in terms of the risk. And in these studies, really confirmed the hypothesis that perceived severity is positively associated with the risk attitude, because people may feel less comfortable, less safe, and feel more conscious when they're encountering with the disguised social bot to a higher degree. However, perceived sustainability is negative associated with the risk attitude. Why? That can be explained that people feel more deterrent and more control when they have more experience to encountering disguised social bots, so they are not less vulnerable. Social bots as the media factors is found to positively associate with the self-efficacy and response efficacy. So the more experience that people using social bots, the higher level of efficacy people feel. But the social bots has no significant associations with the perceived threats. And in terms of the interaction with this information, the higher interaction degree, actually the more likely they feel they will be more efficacy to deal with the problems or issues. Like self-efficacy and response efficacy, they both have the positive association. It's very tricky when we're looking at the interaction with this information. It is positively associated with the perceived severity that similar with our hypothesis, but negative associated with the perceived sustainability. It can be understood similarly as the previous explanation for the response efficacy, because people feel they are more controlled, they are more literate in terms of social media use, social bots use, and so they are not vulnerable. So this study contributes to theory. It extends EPPM to the context of disguised social bot risk. It's the first quantitative research with a theoretical model to investigate the issues in Asia. And the findings can shed light to countries with the high threat of the social bot campaigns or disinformation to make recommendations to prevent such harm. And also we contribute to the social bots behavioral intention measurements and as follows to suit the context of social bot use, and these are not actually developed by anyone else before, so it can be further improved by future study. Thank you so much for your listening and welcome your feedback. And if you want to know more about my findings, and you can look at the paper and also ask me questions. Thank you. Take care. Bye.